He's wanting to be one of the best coaches in the league, and it's showing.
This year he's showing everybody what he's really about. And
Garland drives. He'll find Mobley, and Mobley. It's guided toward the sideline. Mobley, what a play!
A little bit.
Mobley again. An Allen screen. Steps back for three.
Game for you. You got to be ready.
Oh, what a rejection by Jarrett.
Getting Merrill off his feet.
Benson for the basket.
The Cleveland Cavaliers are now 10-0 to start the NBA season. After toppling a very good Golden State Warriors team, they scored a franchise record 83 points in the first half, and they've also tied their franchise record for most 130-point games in a season with 5 already, and we're only 10 games in. This Cavaliers team looks dominant, and they are breaking the NBA. Welcome back to State of the Association. I'm your host. The Cavaliers are not just breaking the NBA through their dominant play. No, it is the fact that they are going against a growing trend in the modern NBA and succeeding as a result of it. A trend that has especially come into prominence in recent years with the rise of social media. Everyone's got an opinion now. NBA Twitter, don't go on there. And just in general, the state of society, the Cleveland Cavaliers are going against all of that because now everyone wants that instant satisfaction. That instant gratification. They don't want to wait the long game. They want to see results now, and the Cavaliers have gone against that entirely. Because this starting five has not altered in years. It's Darius Garland, it's Donovan Mitchell, it's Isaac Okoro, it's Evan Mobley, and it's Jarrett Allen. And in the 2 years that Donovan Mitchell has been there, while there have been fun times for sure, they have not made the conference finals. The first year there, they lost in the first round. Last year, they lost in the East Conference semifinals. And that's not, a result of Donovan Mitchell necessarily or any fault of the players on the roster, because Mitchell in his own right has been amazing. He has developed his playmaking as well. He's a great dynamic scorer for himself, but he's also been able to facilitate for others more than he ever did in Utah. So it's been great to see him develop that side of his game. And I think that really helps him to become one of the best shooting guards in the entire NBA because he's not as one-dimensional as an offensive player anymore. But the main problem with this team, or how it was perceived by the public, was the fact that they just had kind of too much of the same archetype of player. Because at the end of the day, despite all the talent on that starting five, Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are two ball-dominant, primary ball-handling guards, small guards at that, who aren't the best defenders as a result. And then on the other side of the court, on the front court, there you've got Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, two big men who excel defensively, especially Evan Mobley, but they can't really space the floor. They're not great playmakers for others like in Nikola Jokic by any means, and they're more so play finishers. So you got two of those who can't really shoot. And Isaac Okoro, he had his own struggles. He's a really good defender. But up to this point, we hadn't really seen him unlock his full potential as an overall player, as a valuable, really impactful player. So with this team, there were a lot of calls for them to blow it up. But they didn't. They stuck the course. And now it's leading them to success. They are 10-0 with the same roster that they have had for years. And so often in the NBA now, after even one failed season, after one early playoff exit, teams can be so quick to trade away a star player in the hopes to build towards their future instead of waiting it out and seeing what can really become of that team when everything is clicking. And I think a big result of that is social media and highlight culture. Highlight culture because a player is going to get clowned on for having one bad game, and people can disregard 82 regular season games if they have one bad playoff series and forget what that player did for your team. It's a big short-term memory there. And so that player will get traded away, and then they might thrive in a new environment, and the old team wishes they had them back. Because you see so many examples of guys going to new teams, and they just need a new environment to really thrive. And then that also comes down to social media as well, the rise of that, where you have access to so many people, to meet with so many people, have conversations with so many people. It has the potential to really radicalize you and have you be very opinionated in something that is a lot more nuanced. It's not necessarily black and white. It can be a lot more gray. And that happens in the NBA as well. You see an issue as black and white, But really, there's always a lot of nuance to it. And so a player might be inconsistent in the playoffs. Let's look at James Harden, right? He might have 40 one game and then 13 the next. And you take that to think that he is an exceptionally bad playoff performer when if you look at his averages over his career, he's not necessarily a bad playoff performer. That's one example. But in the case of the Cavs, it can just be people in the Cleveland Cavaliers social media after last season talking about, oh, we need to make a trade. We need to change up this roster because it's not going to work together. Get rid of Isaac Okoro. He's not a winning basketball player. Stuff like that between general social media, being able to just voice your opinion to so many people and highlight culture can kind of affect and alter the perception of an NBA franchise and where that team is really headed. Because Steve Kerr even said it, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been good for years now, and this is just continued success. It's not, while it's a surprise maybe that they are 10-0, the fact that they are being a good winning basketball team should not come as a surprise to anyone. But as a result of how social media and highlight culture can affect our thinking, it does kind of become a surprise to see them do so well without making any changes, when really that's just breaking a trend in the NBA that doesn't even necessarily need to be a trend. Because we've seen so many teams, look at the Denver Nuggets. Actually, they aren't a good example necessarily because of Aaron Gordon, but, guys like Jamal Murray, Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., they came from the ground up in Denver, and they stayed the course there for a long time, and it ultimately led to a championship. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they just traded away Cat the season before, or more so the 2 seasons before, what I want to focus on. The first year there, they got Gobert, and they really struggled to figure out the fit between Cat and Gobert, and part of that was because Cat was injured most of that season. But they ended up being the 8 seed, not really progressing after this huge trading away Jay Vando and a couple other guys. But they stay the course for another year, and they trust head coach Chris Finch to put things together and make this game plan work, and they do, and they were one of the top teams in the West last year. And I think if they kept Cat, and whether they do or they didn't, as they ultimately did not, I thought they were going to be a championship contender, and I believe that they absolutely can be. But they've got off to a slow start to the year with Julius Randle, and I believe that would not have been the case if you had not shaken up the roster. So Timberwolves, they had patience, then they went from the 8 seed to a top team in the West. And overall, I think patience can be a very, very good thing in the NBA, and it's something that seems to be happening less and less, but the Cleveland Cavaliers are a great example of how it can work. Because all they really did was bring in a new coach. And that shows the impact of coaching. And it's another trend that they are buckling from the rest of the NBA, because so often the NBA, they love to recycle the same head coaches that haven't really had success in recent years, but for the name value. I believe it was 4 years ago, the Nets fired somewhat successful Kenny Atkinson for Steve Nash, who ended up going on to have a bad stint in Brooklyn. Just last year, the Bucks fired their head coach, AJ Griffin, after a 30-13 start to hire Doc Rivers, who proceeded to have that team's record go downhill in a hurry. And they ended the season 49-33, and now the Bucks look like one of the worst teams in the league after getting Darvin Ham as an assistant coach who had a bad tenure in LA. So the league seems to recycle so often coaches who haven't necessarily had a lot of success recently, but because of their name value, a guy like Doc Rivers, it creates somewhat a version of hope within the fan base, at least with the casual audience, that this coach is going to be able to turn things around because they had success in the past. However, when it's failure after failure, at a certain point, you have to make a change and give another guy a chance. And that's what the Cavs have done by getting Kenny Atkinson, who was a victim of, that Steve Nash going to the Brooklyn Nets to be the head coach. And Kenny Atkinson has went and turned things around in Cleveland, and now they're 10-0. So those are two trends that the Cleveland Cavaliers are breaking, and it's leading to major success, a 10-0 start to the season. And I'm not going to act like I knew all this going into the year. I was a believer that maybe Jarrett Allen should go somewhere else so that he can really utilize his talents, because, it's kind of redundant with him and Evan Mobley. But they have made it work, absolutely, to start the NBA season. Donovan Mitchell still looks like one of the best shooting guards in the NBA. Darius Garland has come out to be one of the best players from that 2019 draft class. And, he's been one of the only ones without major controversy. A guy like Zion or Ja, you don't get that with him. But Darius Garland has been consistent, controversy-free, and a very good point guard for this team. And someone to really highlight is Isaac Okoro. His box score numbers, they don't jump out at you whatsoever. 6 points, 2.6 boards, 1.7 assists, but he has taken major strides in his efficiency as an offensive player. And I mentioned it earlier, the starting five for the Cavs has always been Isaac Okoro, D. Mitch, Darius Garland, Mobley, and Jarrett Allen over the last couple of years. But Isaac Okoro has only been the starter for 3 games out of 10 this NBA season. Regardless of that has helped him find a new role and become more efficient in his own right as an offensive player, because he is a good defensive player. He has been for years now, but he has never been able to get his offensive game together, particularly in regards to his field goal percentage. His efficiency has been league average to below league average for years now. His 3-point percentage has been good, but that's also been on low volume. However, this season, he's having career highs in both field goal percentage and 3-point percentage at 51% from the field. And, really looking at his percentages, his field goal percentage wasn't that much below league average necessarily. But just the low volume of shots he's taking, you would expect him to be hitting over 50% of his shots regularly. But he wasn't. This was the first year of his career. He's averaging over 50% from the field. That's great to see. And his 3-point percentage, hear me out here, 54.5% from 3. And that's only on 2 attempts a game. But he's hitting the shots when he's given them. And in this past game against Golden State Warriors, he had a plus-minus of 32. He's been really impactful for them in his new role where he gets a little bit less minutes. Maybe he's coming off the bench a little bit more. But he's able to come in and make an instant impact on a low volume of shots and still be a great defensive player. He got a block on Curry this past game. Isaac Okoro has really turned things around. You look at the box score, right? That's another trend that comes in the modern NBA. Is people love to box score watch. And that's how they'll determine a player's value. And if you were to do that, then you would say Isaac Okoro has regressed as an NBA player, but he is playing some of the best basketball in his entire career if you take a look at the actual context and watch the games. So that's just another example of the Cleveland Cavaliers breaking trends and being all the more successful for it. They've stayed the course with this team. This whole starting five, they've really turned things around. New head coach Kenny Atkinson is doing amazing for them. And they're all making it work together. They look like one of, if not the best team in the entire league, because as Steph Curry said, you are what your record says you are. And the Cleveland Cavaliers are 10-0 and on top of the NBA, and they are breaking all the trends, so it is great to see for them. They are absolutely a championship contender this year, and that is a result of staying the course, player development, and a new head coach to really put things all together. The sky is the limit for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. That is all for today's episode of State of the Association. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Nash Roberts.